"You don't need a divorce," he said, packing for his 20-year-old. He was wrong. My name is Nora Calloway. I am 35 years old. I stood in the doorway of our bedroom and watched my husband of 12 years pack his suitcase with the calm efficiency of a man going on a business trip. He was not going on a business trip. He was leaving me for a 22-year-old who worked at his firm and was currently waiting in a car outside the house we had built together. And the last thing he said before he zipped that bag closed was, "You don't need a divorce. Just let it be." I kept my face completely still. Because what Thomas did not know, what he had been too distracted by his new life to notice, was that I had been ready for this moment for 6 weeks. Before I tell you everything, take a second to like and subscribe, and drop your country in the comments below. Now, let me take you all the way back. Thomas and I met when I was 22, and he was 28. I was finishing a business degree. He was 3 years into a career at a mid-sized financial consulting firm. And we met at a friend's birthday dinner, where he spent the entire evening arguing with me about an economic policy I had written a paper on. I found it attractive. I should have recognized it as a warning. He had, even then, the quality of a man who needed to be the most correct person in any room he entered. We married 4 years later. 100 guests, a venue in the city, his parents in the front row looking pleased, in the way that wealthy families look pleased at things that meet their expectations. My parents flew in from Portland. My mother cried. I was happy in the specific, unguarded way that requires trusting completely the person standing across from you. For 8 of our 12 years, the marriage was real. We built things together, a home, savings, a life with texture and routine, and the small, private language that couples develop. I managed our finances alongside my career as a project manager. Thomas moved up steadily at his firm. We talked about children and kept postponing the conversation, and I thought that was something we would return to when the timing was better. I did not know that Thomas had already decided the timing would never be right, because Thomas had already begun making different plans. The signs appeared in year 9, and I catalogued them the way a careful person catalogues things they do not yet want to name. Later nights. A phone that now went face down on every surface. The way he began correcting me in front of people. Not aggressively, just with a quiet precision that made me feel slightly smaller each time. A new attention to his appearance. Gym memberships, different clothes, a haircut he asked for by name at a salon he had never mentioned before. I told myself the word for all of this was distance. I was using the wrong word. Her name, I would later learn, was Jess. She was 22 years old, a year into her first job at Thomas's firm, and she had, by the time I became aware of her existence, been involved with my husband for approximately 9 months. I found out not through a dramatic discovery, but through a single forwarded email from a colleague of Thomas's who had decided, quietly and without explanation, to send me a chain of messages that made everything clear. I read it on a Tuesday morning before work. I sat with it for 45 minutes. Then I called my friend Dana and said, very calmly, I need a lawyer. I want to be precise about what happened in the 6 weeks between that Tuesday morning and the afternoon Thomas packed his suitcase. I did not confront him. I did not change my behavior in any way he would notice. I continued making dinner, attending social events, asking about his days with the same interest I had always performed. What I did, quietly, in the mornings before he woke up, and in the evenings after he went to bed, was build a record. Every financial document, every account statement, every asset disclosure I could access. I met with my attorney, Patricia Wells, 3 times in 6 weeks. By the time Thomas stood in our bedroom with his suitcase, Patricia had everything she needed. I don't see why we need to involve lawyers, Thomas said, not looking up from his packing. It's not necessary. You keep the house. I'll handle everything from my end. It's cleaner this way. He said, cleaner the way people say it when they mean easier for me. Cleaner? I said. He looked up briefly. You know what I mean. No courts, no legal mess, no one going through everything. Everyone's comfortable, I said. He pointed at me. Exactly. He went back to folding. I watched him. He was wearing the watch I had given him on our 10th anniversary. He had not taken it off. I thought about that for a moment, and then I let it go. A car horn sounded from outside. Thomas picked up his bag and walked to the door, and I followed him to the entryway. Through the window, I could see a small silver car in the driveway, engine running, someone in the driver's seat. Don't make this harder than it is, Thomas said, picking up the second bag I had not noticed he'd staged by the door the night before. He had been planning this exit for longer than this afternoon. I'm not making it anything, I said. He looked at me then, properly, as if checking for tears or a scene. He found neither. Good, he said. He seemed slightly unsettled by that. He opened the door. Thomas? I said, just before he reached the car. He turned. Enjoy the next 2 weeks. He frowned. What does that mean? I smiled. He waited one more second, then turned and walked to the car. I watched it pull out of the driveway and disappear down the street. Then I went inside, made coffee, and called Patricia. The 2 weeks were necessary because of timing. Patricia needed the filing window aligned with the completion of the asset documentation, and I needed Thomas settled and comfortable and entirely off guard, which he was. I know this because he did not call once in those 2 weeks, not once. He had, apparently, moved seamlessly into his new life, confident that I was sitting at home in quiet compliance. His first call came on a Monday morning, day 15. I was at my kitchen table with coffee and a document from Patricia when his name appeared on my screen. I let it ring twice. Then I answered. My cards aren't working, he said. No greeting. The bank account. I tried to access the investment account and it's showing restricted. What did you do? I took a sip of coffee. The bank flagged some activity on our joint accounts, I said. Large transfers over the past several months to an external account. They've opened a review. Silence. What transfers? He said, but his voice had changed. The confidence had gone somewhere. The ones you made, Thomas. To cover? Well, various expenses. I kept my voice pleasant. They'll be in touch with you directly. Standard process. Olivia. Nora, I said. He had called me by the wrong name. Nora, he corrected, and I could hear him breathing. This is insane. I can explain those transfers. You'll have the opportunity to, I said. In the documentation. My doorbell rang, right on time. Hold on, I said, and I did not mute the line. I walked to the door and opened it. Patricia's colleague, a calm woman named Grace, who handled process serving and document delivery, stood on my step. Behind her was the courier Patricia had arranged for the official filing confirmation. Mrs. Calloway? Grace said, for Thomas's benefit as much as mine. Everything's in order. I made sure my voice carried. Thank you. Come in. Who is that? Thomas said. Who's at the house? Just some people handling paperwork, I said. Speaking of which, you should check your email. Patricia sent everything to your attorney this morning, and to your firm's managing partner. The sound that came through the phone then was not quite a word. I let him process that. Thomas's managing partner was a man named Gerald Hatch, who had spent 30 years building a firm on the word integrity and printed it on every piece of client material they produced. Gerald Hatch was also the man who had approved Thomas's last 2 promotions, and who would now be reading a carefully prepared document outlining the use of jointly held marital funds to cover personal expenses related to an undisclosed relationship with a direct report at the firm. That last part, the direct report detail, had been Patricia's idea. She had, as she put it, a sense of what Gerald Hatch valued. Thomas called back 4 times in the following hour. I did not answer. Dana? who had been my first call on that Tuesday morning 6 weeks ago, and who had since become the person I debriefed with after every Patricia meeting, texted at noon. She said, "The office is a situation." I texted back, "How dramatic." She sent back a single laughing face. By mid-afternoon, Thomas had reached Patricia's office directly. She called me afterward. "He wants to negotiate," she said, in the tone of someone describing a weather pattern. "He's offering the house, full equity, and a clean split of the joint accounts." I was quiet for a moment. "And the investment accounts? He'd like to retain those." "No," I said. Patricia paused. "I'll convey that," she said. The counteroffer took 4 hours. By 6 in the evening, Thomas had agreed to a full asset disclosure, an equitable division that included the investment accounts, and a timeline that Patricia found acceptable. The text I received from his number at 7 that night said, "I'll sign whatever you need." I showed it to Patricia in the morning. She was not surprised. The divorce was finalized 11 weeks later. The house remained mine. The financial settlement was complete. Thomas's position at the firm had already changed, quietly, by the time the papers were signed. Gerald Hatch was a man who moved with precision and did not tend to announce his decisions. Jess, I was told by Dana, had left the firm of her own choice 2 weeks after everything surfaced. Thomas was, by the time the ink dried, in an apartment across town, rebuilding from a position considerably less comfortable than the one he had occupied the morning he told me I didn't need a divorce. I did not feel triumphant about any of it. I want to be clear about that. There is a version of this story where the ending is a celebration, a raised glass, a clean and satisfying click of justice delivered. What I actually felt the morning after the papers were signed was something quieter, a low, steady sense of solid ground under my feet. The specific relief of a person who was ready and is now, finally, done being ready. I redecorated the house in the spring. Not dramatically. I did not gut the rooms or erase every trace of the life that had been lived in them. I changed what I wanted to change, kept what I wanted to keep, and found that the process of deciding for myself what belonged in my own home was something I had not done in a long time and had missed without knowing it. Thomas's home office became a reading room. His collection of framed industry awards was replaced, over several weeks, with prints I had chosen carefully. The house felt, gradually, like mine, 6 months after the signing. Dana came over on a Saturday morning with coffee and the specific energy of someone carrying news. She sat at my kitchen table and told me that Thomas was living with a friend from college, that Jess had moved to another city, and that Gerald Hatch had promoted Thomas's former junior colleague to the role Thomas had vacated. She told me this without dramatic delivery, just as information, because that is what it was. "Do you think about him?" she asked. "Sometimes," I said, "less than I expected to." She nodded. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You know what I keep thinking about? That 2 weeks. That you knew, and you just waited. You had the whole thing ready, and you just smiled and waved at the driveway." I thought about that morning, the suitcase, the car horn. His face when I said, "Enjoy the next 2 weeks," that small, uncertain frown from a man who was used to being the one who knew things. "He underestimated me," I said. "He had been doing it for years." That morning was just the first time I let him see that he was wrong. Dana looked at her coffee. "That's the part that gets me," she said. "He built a life with someone who was smarter than him and never noticed." I smiled. Outside the kitchen window, the garden was doing what it does in spring, quietly, without announcement, becoming something new. I opened my journal that evening and wrote one line. Not for Thomas. Not for anyone who would read it. Just for the record of what the year had actually been. I was ready before he decided to leave. That is the whole story.